79T 2458 Learning Corp. Little Red Riding Hood. Take one.
Morning, fellas. Hope you're enjoying your Saturday. I suck at these lead-in things, but I figure it's going to be a fun episode anyway, because I got a good topic for you. Welcome to the show. All right, I hear you. There's always one guy in the comments complaining, you sip your coffee and it's so loud in the mic. Stop doing that. Fine. In the meantime, stop doing this.
Sounds very paranoid to me. Like, Still Read is quite paranoid to me, but it screams a little bit of somebody who is very paranoid on anyone. I think I do think there's an element of suspicion. Like, if you are feeling a certain level of vulnerability, that I think this guy definitely is.
Technically on that one, she was ragging on Rich, not me, but whatever. We're going with there. Hey, Red Morning, welcome. It's Saturday. I'm a little tired this morning. It's birthday weekend, so we're having fun. Not mine, but somebody else's, the old ladies. So it's good times. But we are going to have time for you. Not going to make Red Morning or Rule 0, unfortunately. So I am going to talk about Praxeology, the dominant male. And I think this is one of those ones. People don't really understand what the heck people talk about when they talked about the red pill space. I'm equating it to Star Wars. There was a really good original trilogy with a horrible set of sequels from talentless hacks and insufferable fans. And I honestly do think it's a really good analogy. So let's get into it. First part of it is going to be what the heck does that mean by praxeology of the dominant male, how that leads to praxeology like as a practice, and why everybody gets so much of this wrong and what they're going to do about it. So it's going to be more free form. I normally do these like more structured, but we're going to have some fun. I see you guys in the chat. Thank you very much. Southern Hemisphere, good to catch me live. It's good to see you guys. And some sweet books. Heir to the Empire by Timothy Zahn. Never heard of that one, but I mean, I've got like 500 lists of books that I have to get to. So a lot of people don't understand praxeology when they talk about red pill this and red pill that. It's mostly just a marketing buzz term. They don't know what it means. It just sounds cool. To call somebody alpha means they're like good, or if like you're a Christian, you would say they're godly, or, you know, good and evil, right and wrong, red and blue. It's just like, I guess when you give a child like a computer, they're going to use it to draw poop. Praxeology's never been about good or bad. It's always about utility and lack of utility. If you remember an older cast of mine I did with somebody, she mentioned we mentioned the trolley dilemma, which is like a utilitarian versus, I always get that word wrong, dentist. Hold on a sec, let me look at this up. If I'm going to do this, let's do it right. Dentological. In other words, do you act in a process that is beneficial and then whatever happens, or do you act in a way to consciously try to cause the least amount of harm? And for the girl, she couldn't separate a moral thing from, like, a moral statement from its factual objectives, which is a very feminine thing to do, which also reminds me of probably one of my favorite, I reference him so damn much, between Whisper, Jack Ten of Hearts, and Archwinger. I swear to God, this channel is just like the three amigos of red pill. Anyways, he was talking about how a lot of people used to argue about the red pill stuff. They used to call it purple pill debate. They call it the Thunderdome. It was never going to work out because it's distracting, it's entertaining, it's fun, but ultimately nobody's going to see eye to eye, and I get that. So part of this was, well, the red pill itself is just a praxeology. There's no ideology to it. There's no philosophy. There's no like guiding principles, 10 commandments, any of that stuff, any of that nonsense, none of it. But people have their own values and their own morals and their own ideas, and they kind of come with those things in themselves, which is fine. So women generally think of truth as subjective, you know, my truth. The word truth to a very general woman would be the equivalent of like a codified set of her own experiences. That's why it's my truth, and that's why it's your truth, and they can say that and they can believe it. Morality, though, is very objective. There's one morality, there's this, and you're either like 1% to 100% on this moral spectrum. But the reason that happens is because women have like a natural propensity to defer to an authority. You know, my dad, my husband. I refer to it as the hypergamous best option. But it's essentially that. But the reason you want that authority is because the authority sets the moral agenda. So if you've ever wondered why, like, you can see some brand new thing just started off, a fad, a phase, I don't know, something to do with bathrooms and college sports, for example, not mentioning any names. I want to keep the YouTube channel. And then all of a sudden, women are on board with it. It's the greatest thing ever. And you're like, that's weird. You didn't like it like last minute. Well, it's because generally speaking, once you get a new authority, and this is why marketing works so well on women, it's because marketers understand that the idea is to present themselves as a luxury brand and an authority. And then once they do, they set their moral agenda, basically buy my widgets. And so for the subset of women that, I don't want to say fall for the marketing, but are susceptible to the marketing, they tend to go with it. That's why Peloton, never heard of Peloton, all of a sudden one day they're like, oh, it's the greatest bike ever. And then tomorrow it's like, oh, Coach purses. And then the week after that, it's, oh, Louis Vuitton is the greatest thing ever. Oh my God, Jeffree Star's got a new makeup program. This is amazing. But you see what I mean? It's always some new thing. So yeah, a moral objectivity. And so when you were to argue with a woman, you tend to get like the facts don't matter, and people's character is not only on the table. It's the whole point of the argument. Who here is the better person? Who is the worst person? Who's the authority? It's all status and jockeying games. So that way, once we establish who the better person is, they get to set the agenda. On the other hand, from a praxeological or red pill standpoint, truth is objective. Like there's one set of facts, and statements you have can be closer or further from it. Even when I talk about like my moon is made out of cheese reference, where I don't really care if a statement is true, just that it's useful. The reason I say that's not because I don't care about truth, or like the red pill doesn't care about truth. It's that being closer to truth is better than not being closer to truth. So if there's a statement that's not quite there yet, but it's close enough, that's considered like, yeah, it's good enough until you come up with something better, as opposed to what a lot of people do, where it's like, well, this isn't 100% ironclad fact of the universe, therefore nothing matters and we're all even. It's like, no. There's wronger than wrong. You know, some things that are wrong, some things that are right, some things that are so wrong that they can't even be considered wrong. Yeah. Well, see, yeah, Nick, he gets where I'm going with this. Men are a luxury brand. So where was I on this? Oh, right. Morality for guys tends to be subjective. Like, we understand that because we're very tribal by nature. You know, we go on a hunting group. If we do something that's good for for our tribe and bad for another tribe, we understand that, and the other tribe understands that. Most movies, like how many movies do you remember seeing, like guy movies, like, you know, samurai films from the 50s, spaghetti westerns, where it's two people and you can understand that from their own perspectives they're absolutely right? Or a good example, actually, the new John Wick film, where Donnie Yen, he's basically hired to kill John Wick in order to save his daughter. Otherwise, they're going to kill his daughter. So you're like, dude, I can see that. He would be the protagonist if the movie wasn't called John Wick. It was called Kane. But John Wick, on the other hand, I'm avenging my wife and this stuff. So everybody there understands like the subjective morality. In other words, this is good for me and bad for you. This is good for me. It's bad for you. So when you talk to a guy or a red-pilled, you know, praxeological man on this stuff, what do you get? They try to discover, like, what statements are more factual. You know, facts don't care about your feelings. That nonsense. And the morality's out of it. Like, I don't care if he's an asshole. Is he right? So when you get these two things arguing with each other, you get one side thinks that facts don't matter, and then the other side just doesn't care how much of a jerk you are. Yeah, it's not bad. It's not bad. It's not about that. I don't like using fictional examples too much because then people start going down the rabbit holes like John Wick is the aspiration. Like, no, just a quick illustration to illustrate a point. Relax. We're not going to start talking about who's better, Captain America or Iron Man or nothing stupid like that. So on the end of this, you get two people arguing, not on the same level. Nothing is agreed upon. This is why the praxeology matters. And there's a whole bunch of things to it. So before I get into the praxeology, the dominant male, I'll segue into one more quick thing here.
I don't usually post pictures of my kids online, but they're infants and you can barely see them, so, it's fine. But a YouTuber named Ryan Stone tweeted, showing off the F trophies for clout. So the babies are trophies that I'm showing off. It's perhaps not a surprise that a picture of a proud father would be so upsetting to the sort of man who clearly never had one.
I think I forgot the topic. What the heck was it on there? Ultimately distracting. Oh, right. The praxeology thing. So what was the recent thing? I think somebody was talking about it. Yeah, you probably see it on Substack. It turns out that I do these concurrent activities so you can follow it. If you guys haven't followed, by the way, Substack, it's replaced my email list. Here, I'm pulling up my link to this thing. You think I'd be ready? Not ready at all. There it is. Give it a follow if you want to. There's the free and the paid one. Both are pretty good in value. So it's, again, if you don't have enough blog reading on your thing, yeah, get onto it. There we go. I should probably pin this one. Finally started reading Manuel Smith. Congratulations, though, sir. It's good. It's good. So when you get into these like moral and factual disagreements, it makes really good blood sport. This is why like the girls and the very like female allies, I don't know, I'll call it that because I don't think you can call anybody gay anymore. Apparently it's against Canadian law right now to use a homophobic slur. Human Rights Tribunal thing. So I was like, I don't need to end up in the Canadian Hague, the Hague, eh? So we'll talk about bundles of sticks and British cigarettes. Yeah, so generally speaking, the sneaky fucker types that, want to be feminine allies and they think like women and they act like women, hoping that gets them, the sex that they want. That's why you're seeing a lot of guys now start to act like this. And I'd say the red-pilled space is awesome because it shows you a perfect example of how men are basically women now. And I don't mean this as like a slur. I mean this as in like actually acting like women. What's the most popular thing right now? Oh my God, it's like a telenovela. Oh my God, he just got out of jail and this girl talked to a racist and this guy here is threatening a box to match this guy. And then, oh my God. And you see this stuff and people are invested. There's Marvel fan theories out about, Donovan v. Myron, Civil War. You're like, what in the fuck? But you got to realize this, and here is the subversive part of it that I don't like, but I understand why it's a thing. We've kind of reached a critical mass of men being raised as defective women right now. I don't know why. I don't know how. I don't really care about the things. It's here, and we can deal with it. Navel gazing about the reasons doesn't really help. There is so many guys that act like this now that somebody can in earnest tell you, well, men and women are totally the same. Look at these guys. All these chick behaviors you're talking about, the negative parts of hypergamy or AWOLT. This guy does it. This guy does it. It's like, yeah, those guys do it. Those guys are defective. I almost shouldn't even use the word defective because I don't like saying that somebody's fundamentally broken, but the behavior is. I should go back to my military training. Don't insult the person, insult the behavior. The behavior is defective. Hey, Dark Knight Dev, $10 super chat. Talk to Rob Says about the White Claw Power Hour. Myron yelling about women attracted to clout and dollars and how they get in line. I think these guys are all paying tribute to Michael's story. Dude, it's been a while. I should almost do a retelling of Michael's story. If you guys haven't heard of this one, it's this great story. It's actually, if you go to the Sidebar series, I think it's the first video on that one from the first piece. It's about Dalrock, which the Christian red pill author back in the 2010s. He was talking about how the increase of single women that will never get married is getting worse and that people are underestimating it. And he was showing some statistics to it, which it's, take it or leave it, whatever. And then underneath it, there was this guy, Michael. Now, Michael was talking about how he was in college working hard, basically trying to be the traditional white picket fence conservative type. And all the girls were out there sucking dick and getting drunk and having fun. And then one day, in a moment of pure lucidity, he looks over to the girl. He's like, you do realize you can't have your cake and eat it too. It's like, you whores will never get married and settle down and be happy. You're going to be alone with cats. And the girls just started laughing at him. And the one's like, oh, not only am I going to have my cake and eat it too, it's going to come with sprinkles and chocolate frosting. Now, the only thing that would have made this story better is it's been about 10 years to find out how it resulted, which would be nice, but Michael's never coming back. The point of it is, as you first read it, when you're first in your anger phase, you get like all pissed off, like, son of a bitch, I can't believe these women think they can get away with this. And then you kind of, red pill, it tapped into my anger. I resonate with this. And then you start seeing, the praxeology and the different parts. You build yourself a frame, get some abundance, get some women, get some money, all that good stuff. Then you start to realize, like, you see the story from the opposite side. You see like a bitter, angry, virginal man who thought he was doing the right thing because, women in his life told him to, and those soyish men. But all he realized is that, oh my God, I've just been denied so much happiness out of my life because I listened to these people that say they wanted the best for me, but actually made my life worse. Like, that's how you end up taking it. And that's kind of why I love it as a story. Like, my favorite red pill stuff is that him, Esther Villar, and actually, I think those are the two big ones, where you read it the first time when you're in your anger phase and it resonates with you and it sinks in. You're like, yeah, fuck these bitches. And then you go through and like a year or two later, you go back to it. You're like, Jesus, this person, like Esther Villar, you're a bitter feminist that got mad. You got kicked out of the Fun Boys Club. And so you made your own feminist fanboy club with hookers and blow. And that was like the MRAs. Basically feminism for the pick-me girls. Michael's story, same thing. The traditional conservative guy, all they're doing is dooming a generation of men to failure and misery. And all kinds of problems come from it. No, we're not talking about First Blood. Good movie, though. Good movie. So then why is there a need for a praxeology, right? Well, that's obviously why there's a need for it. There's a lot of conventional wisdom, a lot of common sense, a lot of, good, solid American advice, Canadian advice. This is what we do in the West. And it's just dog shit. It's absolute dog shit because, again, we're thinking like women. There's no truth. Oh, nothing's true. Like, is it true that women are doing this and men are doing... Like, no, that's not true. My truth is you marry your high school sweetheart. And that's the worst part is because who gets paraded around? Guys who, like, their first love, their high school sweetheart. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but it's rare. It's rare enough that there's a big enough group that you can take them and put them up there. Like, no shade on Peterson, but yeah, when it comes to men and women, he's got zero experience. Well, one experience. Same as, who was the other example? There was a meme going out about it on Twitter, which I thought was funny, where it was, I think it was him and Ben Shapiro and then Rollo, where he was like, yeah, I've got a notch count of 1 and I married my high school sweetheart. And Ben was like the same thing. And then Rollo, or no, I begged my wife to marry me. I begged my wife to marry me. And then Rollo's like, she begged to marry me. I kind of resonate more with the Rollo side because my girl kind of had like, when we first got together, kind of had a freak out moment when she's like, I don't know if you love me or not. I was like, of course I do. Like, at this point, I just wanted to stop crying. But, it worked out. I think we did the math. We're like at 14 years now, which is pretty good. But the point of this is it's like nobody cares about men. They just care about their own moral hierarchy. They've established an authority, which in this case is the feminine imperative, not feminism, the feminine imperative. So whatever is good for women in the land of abundance, they will take over because women have figured out how to weaponize the male protective instinct for their own benefit. It's not a cabal of conspiracy theorists, although there is some groups that try to act in coercion. It's mostly an emergent strategy because you get 100 women together and you tell them, this is the ground rules, go do your thing. They're all generally going to act in a similar way to the other 99 women, which looks like a conspiracy, but actually isn't. Now you can map that to whatever other conspiracy group you want, but I'm not going to do that here. No, thank you, sir. Where am I going with this one? Oh, yeah. So we've reached kind of a critical mass right now. And unfortunately, the only way it goes back is when men become more important. Now, I don't know about you guys, but that basically means a collapse. Like some kind of thing where all of a sudden real danger happens, an invading army, which is very hard. Imagine an entire army getting across the Pacific or the Atlantic with enough force to like scare the women straight. Probably not. Or what's the other ones? The electrical grid goes down, like some major catastrophe. And there's some prepper types that are like, oh, I can't wait for the world to go to hell. Because while everybody's going to be miserable and starving and desperate, at least the women will finally learn their place. And I'm just like, I don't know, man. I don't think betting on the apocalypse is a solid sexual strategy, but you do you. Which, by the way, One More Please taught me that's a code word for go fuck yourself. Shut up. Yeah, return, exactly. Return to when you had to dig a hole in the ground and burn your poop afterwards. It's like, nah. So how do you navigate? It's I call it hostile enemy territory, but it's in the macro. Yes, it's hostile alien territory or hostile enemy territory. It turns out male and female sexual strategies are intrinsically like adversarial. Men versus women versus men. That's why women learn to lie, men learn to like, grape and attack. Like anytime you look at these macro effects, they're always adversarial. But, and this is one of those neat things about like evolutionary psych, is that while in the macro, men and women are adversarial, in the micro, they tend to be more collaborative. I mean, Archwinger had a great thing, and She's Not on Your Team, which was basically suggesting, look, I get it, you're acting attractive now, you're red pilled, that stuff is great. But, just because when you're on the top of your game and she goes along with you does not mean she's on your team. And everybody who's ever had like a zeroing out experience can say, yeah, she was great until something happened and she wasn't. Sometimes it was like, oh, I got sick and then right away she was sleep with my brother. Or, she held in for as long as she could, 5 years. No shame. Like at this point, if you're with somebody and you're, betting your livelihood on somebody and they start to become, limp and lame and dud, yeah, it's a natural survival instinct to think about, well, maybe there's a different option out there for me. But once you understand that, again, remember the whole point is like to learn to love your woman for who she is, not who you want her to be. And so you understand there's always that burden of performance. Although I'm not sure if burden's the right word, but that's the word that's the term that was used, which is fine. Again, these comes with pros and cons. When you get a woman that's her hypergamous best option, she tends to be fiercely loyal to you. And guys love that stuff. A fiercely loyal woman, probably one of the best things ever. But you don't get that unless you actually have like healthy boundaries, good expectations, a little bit of edge to you, like a Machiavellian thing. And understanding basically that, it's all voluntary. You could be the greatest man in her life until you're not, and then she's off. And I'm okay with that too. As a guy, you'll bounce back, you'll be fine. But that's our goal. Like I get so now that you know all the terrain, a lot of the advice you're getting before has been bad. A lot of people are unhelpful. The moral framework that people have that caused this to happen, and the reasons that you tend to have a lot more enemies out there than allies when it comes to your own best interest. What do you do with that? Well, that was the whole point of a praxeology. You have a clearly defined problem. You have a clearly defined set of tools. You have a clearly defined outcome that you're looking for. How do you deal with that? And praxeology, the dominant male, kind of came from that. So, a quick thing here.
Boom, what's up, fam? Got some big news to share that unfortunately is not so good, so I'm gonna jump right into it. You're gonna watch this video and you're gonna cry. At least we can laugh at your eyes as you cry, like in the corner like a little girl in the fetal position.
There she is. All right, so this is Ian Ironwood. He was in porn working. Can't remember if it was the marketing side of things or he was like the on-set shrink. I think it was the marketing side though. Anyways, he was kind of like a Rolo, married 15, 20 years, exposed to a very hypersexual industry, had some great red pill takes in this. Honestly, I think if you're not dealing with booze or porn or the military or lawyering, it's kind of interesting because those are like the places that you tend to see the more feral nature of people. Like remove all veneers, all lies, and it's just honest actions. So they tend to have the best attitudes towards this. Anyway, so he was talking about the praxeology of the dominant male. And it started off with a letter from a female reader of his that was using his red-pilled stuff to get herself a good man. She was basically fell for the feminist lie. Think of it like Allie. You know when Allie was talking about that? Like, oh, they had me in the military. I can do what a man could do, and feminism this and feminism that. And then she's like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm going to marry an old hot guy and have a bunch of his kids. And you're like, all right, great. So this girl's like, I'm pleased to inform you, after only 3 weeks, I managed to claim a pretty staunch red pill boy. I didn't mention my medical school or charity work, familial problems. And I mentioned that marriage was something I was looking forward to and living with a man and our children. He's like, man, it's too easy. It's been a whole year now. Our relationship's never been better. Now I have to tell you, he's none the wiser that I'm no red-pilled girl. And I've been able to maintain the illusion that he's in control. He has been so over the moon about meeting a conservative, attractive, intelligent girl who is family-oriented. He's loose in his own red pill ideas without me saying a thing. You know, that women shouldn't work or take care of the kids, etc. She's like, you know, don't worry, I'll treat him right. Same as he treats me, and I'm sure. And as she's like, crave the dominant man. It was just great. And so, yeah, red pill girl in the bedroom, you know, not so much with jobs, chores, and life. Can't have it all, can we? And this is where Ian comes back. He snaps back with like, yeah, I don't think you're getting it. Like, he knows, like, you think you're pulling a fast one on him. I think I have a video on this if you ever seen it. It's called The Smartest Dogs Are the Easiest to Train. And this is why men often get manipulated by this, right? Now, in this case, it's benevolent manipulation. She wanted him. She wanted a family. She wanted a boyfriend, a husband, all that stuff. So she basically incentivized him by acting like the kind of woman he wanted to be. And she's like, I'm playing a trick on him. In reality, I'm one of these boss bitches, right? But the guy's like, I don't give a shit. Like, if you ever wondered my saying, don't care, got laid, this is where it originally came from 2014? Yeah, 2014. Don't care, got laid. Yeah, she thinks she's pulling a fast one on him. She's not really like this. But as a guy, we fundamentally don't care. Are you acting right? Perfect. I don't care what's in your head. You don't need to worry about what a girl is thinking or feeling. She's allowed to feel whatever she wants to. But once she steps up to the plate, how she acts as your woman is what matters. And this is one of those fundamental things you have to keep in mind when you're talking about your own praxeology. Like, how are you approaching sex and relationships and plates and all of that stuff? It's, what do I want? And in this guy, he knew what he wanted. He said he knew what he wanted. Actually, I should correct that. He said he knew what he wanted. He wanted a conservative woman, barefoot and pregnant, whatever. And the girl walked in. He's like, oh, so I know what you like, and I'll act like this. I won't talk about my, daddy issues and all this stuff. And she just acts like she wants to act. Now, the beauty of this is, as a girl decides I'm falling for this guy, they tend to buy their own hype. So in reality, she starts to believe this stuff. It's not that she says here she's doing it to keep him happy. But arguably, in the same way that this guy has his narcissistic fantasy of his like conservative woman, white picket fence thing, she will have her own borderline personality, which is to fit the role of the men. It's like the women are water and men are the container. It's another Archwinger post. But because there's that initial desire there, she's invested and she desires him, and their goals are aligned. They're not on the same team, but their goals are aligned. And this is how a good example of how you get those macro level adversarial sexual strategies. She's basically lying to him. He's building a fantasy for her and wants to coerce her into it. Very adversarial. But then when you get them together, she's happy. She comes in. He likes all the stuff about her. He's happy. She's acting right. And then he kind of realizes like, oh, so I truly don't care if she's barefoot and pregnant and just staying at home taking care of the kids. This girl can go do, what was she, a doctor? Something like that. Anyways, whatever, doctor. It's like, oh, I can still get that great type of woman that I'm looking for with the job. And he's like, oh, okay then. If I'm getting what I want, why do I care about this? And this is how that kind of, and this is like as close as you're ever going to get to negotiating desire. Because it's not the desire. It's where you just refine what it is you want out of life. And this is where I argue you can't have solid boundaries without a woman in your life. Because they're never tested. It's in the what chapter is it? It's in one of my chapters on Praxeology Volume 1 frame. I wish I could remember exactly, but there's like 64 separate sections. It's somewhere in the middle, though, where I talk about the oak. And the idea there is that they had oak trees that were built in biodomes. And and they found without like wind and rain and pushing them, that trees grew higher, taller, and faster, but they had no structural stability to them. So it turns out you need that constant buffeting of nature against these trees for them to build a more costly type of, I know, not cartilage, I can't remember what the stuff's called in trees. It was a scientific name. Anyways, they have the fibers that are there to make it strong and the fibers that are there to make it big. Without the thing, you need it strong. So same as with women. You can say, and this is why you see so much Dunning-Kruger amongst single guys. Like, no offense to the White Claw Power Hour, but totally offense. Where they're like, I need a bitch that does this, and I need this, and I need that. And they got wholeheartedly understanding. I know exactly what I want, and she better not do this. She has purple hair. We're out of here. A tattoo? Fuck, it belongs to the streets. Oh my God, she's got a notch count of 1/2. Well, fuck it, I'm out. And all these guys that are in relationships already just laugh. It's like, dude, you're going to find out. That's not what you care about at all. You're using him as a proxy for what you actually want, because a lot of guys hide what they really want. You want a girl that's sexually available. You want a girl that's invested, both sexually and logistically. And you want a girl that's not a drain on your personal well-being, like, you know, finances, emotional. You don't need an emotional person that's just driving you nuts all the time, that makes you want to stay at work and dread coming home. Those are the things that guys want. And all the stuff we talk about tends to be a secondary factor. It's like, oh, I love girls that have this because you think that those girls have this. That's the symbol that the girls you want have. But, you know, most guys are stupid. We don't understand that. And then once you get into a relationship, you start to see, wait a minute, I love a girl that, you know, does this stuff, but this one has a tattoo. Well, she's actually making me happy. So, maybe tattoos aren't so bad. Hey, this one here, her hair's a little short. Oh, been absolutely great with the kids. Maybe it's whatever. And that's when guys start to like hone in what it is they want and what boundaries they want, and where the go or no-go things are. Ideally, you should get this from dating a lot. So one thing that sucks from Michael's story is that Michael has no experience. So when Michael eventually does settle down with that 28-year-old ex-porn star who's like, oh, I've just found God. He's like, oh, thank God, because I've been here the whole time. The prodigal son returns and he's brought himself a whammon. When that stuff comes in, all of a sudden, all of those boundaries he thought he had, he has to start second, like, is this what I really want? Because the girl will have all the symbols. This is why I talk about the sun hat goddess. You know, sit there with the sun hat and a summer dress, posing in a wheat field, and they're like, oh, she's so traditional. Look at that summer dress showing off them cleavages. But then they realize, oh, well, she's kind of bitchy, you know, spends a lot of money. She's always out partying, and I don't like that. Or, oh, she's tired. I'm tired of her yelling at the kids. But so she meets all of those secondary markers, all those symbols, which are hallmarks of narcissism, by the way. All those symbols are met, but the underlying behavior that they are supposed to represent isn't there. And so when you get a guy that has this kind of covert contract in his life, you know, no colored hair, no tattoos, no piercings. This girl's got all of that, but she's frigid. She always has a headache, and she hates the kids. What happens there? Well, you break a guy's covert contract that if I meet all these things, I'll get the woman I want. He starts to get resentful, starts to get angry. If you've ever wondered, by the way, why a lot of guys will end up doing like the most degenerative behavior, like, I'm going to get a mistress, pass her around on Tinder, or I'm going to get into drugs or gambling and stuff like that. I'm not going to say it's the sole reason for it, but a big contributing factor is these major life-altering, committed, covert contracts getting just crushed. It's like, but then all the Christians have to do is like, oh, he's a porn addiction, and he's like, oh, okay, good, it's not my fault, it's an addiction, because addictions aren't my fault. The feminists taught me that. Anything's not my fault counts. That's why porn addiction is so popular amongst like the religious crowd, because they need it to be. Because they don't have a porn addiction. They have a wife doesn't want to fuck me because I'm acting unattractive addiction. They have a girl used to be like a huge slut, and now she found God, and she's trying to prove herself that she's not like that anymore by absolutely removing any sexuality from her life. You get two miserable people, both of them living a lie because they're focused so much on aposemitism? The Ajax talked about it before. You're focused so much on that you forget to focus on what actually matters. Oh, Jesus. Just notice this. Sean Bipley, $100 super chat. That is 20 cuck articles of heartfelt, sir. 20 cuck articles of it. Thank you again. No comment attached, so I guess, yeah, all we can say is thank you again. Make it 3 for 3. Bishop's here. So is breaking a covert contract like a narcissistic injury? I mean, I can't say for sure. It does seem to parallel it quite well, but I'm not going to be that guy who's like, I just figured out the secrets, where I can say that for sure. But again, it doesn't really matter. As long as if you understand it that way and you shed your covert contracts, then good enough. It's good enough. Moon is made out of cheese, right? And that's why there's like these things are in steps. So when I'm talking to a lot of guys who are like just got into a relationship, they've been dating a girl for like 3 weeks and they're talking about breaking frame and stuff. I'm like, dude, slow down. There's steps here. Your step is just plates. Date a lot of girls, date every, you know, that whole, what's that Susan Venkner thing that Rolo likes to question where date everybody, date the bad boy, date this, date that. Do you ever wonder why that sounds so weird when she says it? It's because she's basically talking like she's a man trying to talk to men. Yeah, you're supposed to get, as Royce would call it, the 282 rule. For every 282, so every 12 girls you date, you're going to get 2 girls that are above your league, 2 girls that are slump busters, and then 8 girls that are kind of average and middling. And that goes for everything. That goes for looks. That goes for looks. That goes for personality. That goes for behavioral issues. Out of those 12 girls you date, 8 girls are going to be, you know, pretty average in bed. 2 girls are just going to lay there like starfish. And 2 girls are going to be absolutely insane. 2 girls are going to have, you know, I was raped by my uncle when I was 6. 8 girls are going to be like, I had a couple crappy boyfriends. And then 2 are going to be like, oh, every man I've known has been great. I've never left the farm. I haven't seen a dick that didn't belong to a cow since, you know, since I met you or before I met you. Yeah, see, this is another reason. I never actually put it in my article why I don't like the idea of vetting. Because you see, this problem is guys have no tested boundaries, no experience with what they do when they don't want, and they're hyper fixated on these symbols that they're mostly given to by other people who also don't have a clue. Blind leading the blind. So when you talk about vetting, you're telling somebody who has no experience and a lot of imagination. Yeah, you're smart enough, you'll figure this out. It's like the biggest Reddit tier energy when it comes to relationships, and it's absolutely annoying. And I just laugh because every guy who talks about his vetting strategy, soon as he runs into a girl that's an exception to it, but's meeting his needs, he starts to come up with some justification for it. And it's like, dude, if you have to make up a reason why this rule breaker still counts, either your rules suck or you're not really adhering to them anyway, so why even bother to have them? If the moon was cheese, America would have deep fried it by now. I like that. Okay, so back to the Praxeology article. And the one point he does make a good point of it. I always hate bringing it up, but it's strong, and you're like, oh, it's just semantic. Like, it's not semantic. He's like, the anonymous reader mistakenly calls the red pill an ideology, similar to feminism or any other one. The thing is, red pill isn't an ideology, it's a praxeology. What does that matter? Isn't that just an intellectual technicality? He's like, actually, it makes all the difference. All the difference. Ideologies are belief systems. They hold up ideals, moral, ethical, social ideals. What would Jesus do? Ideological. You know, good feminist this, blah, blah, blah. Good man this. Ideologies. Ideals. Humanism, Marxism, Christianity, the Boy Scout law, all are ideologies of various sorts. They establish lofty goals to which we aspire, celebrating, unifying beliefs that theoretically guide our purposes. So that's the thing. It's always, and I know it's strange to call them narcissistic fantasies, but in a way they are. I would argue they're not 12 out of 10, you know, pathological narcissistic fantasies, although they can be. A pathological person who attaches to an ideology turns it into a pathological narcissistic fantasy. In this case, I mean this more as in like the average level of narcissism, like healthy ideological, ideals. Case in point, I keep mentioning it. What would Jesus do? So you hold up Jesus as the ideal, and you know you're never, like everybody knows, you're never going to be as good as Jesus. Well, at least I hope you're not. I don't know, maybe one of you guys is like, dude, I'm way better than Jesus. I robbed 3 banks. He only flipped the moneylenders at 1. I'm like, all right, fair enough. So when you try to aspire to them, you know you're never going to make it, and there's a guilt feedback loop where like you can't do good enough, and so you're guilted into continuing to try harder. It's a way of getting everybody to act in lockstep using like a shaming society. A lot of places are big on it. And this is kind of the old order. I think Rollo talks about it all the time, the old order thinking. Remember that old order thinking? He says it a lot. I don't know if he still does. Now it's mostly about boobs and hoes and stuff, but yeah. This is that old order thinking that Susan Vinker and Abe, what's that fucking, the one that sounds like she's Amish that I thought was a guy for the longest time, Jedediah Bila, that's the one. Steven Pinker, all them. Yeah, it's ideological pushing in there. Praxeologies, on the other hand, though, praxeologies are not systems of belief, they're systems of practice. You see that difference, though? Belief, what do you think, what's inside, versus what's in front of me, what can I do? Actions versus thought. Feelings versus actions. It's like fundamentally a different thing, and it always is irksome when I see somebody be like, oh, it's just a semantic difference. No, man. It's the difference between thinking about building a house and picking up a hammer. Jesus built my hot rod. So they're not concerned with whether something lives up to a preconceived ideal. They are concerned with whether or not something actually works. Engineering, small engine repair, computer coding, fishing, first aid, all praxeologies. The red pill is a praxeology, not an ideology. And it's funny because he makes a reference to Keone Galt's Game is Red Pill article from back in 2008. So this is guys like every 4 years we're kind of like scavenging the stuff from 5 years past and regurgitating it now. I'm just lucky enough that I get to go and do 4 iterations of that all at once for you guys. So that's great. And he brings up the conservative one here. I think this is important because conservative men tend to be the most disillusioned and the most receptive to hearing people talk about red pill stuff, mostly because it's the underdog, or at least it was. I don't know about now. Now it seems to be pretty dominant on internet, which means nothing. But he's like, yeah, the difference is telling because when one examines the ideology of the red pill and assumes it favors a male-dominant marriage, it automatically also favors the stay-at-home mom, the male breadwinner of the days of yore. It could be disconcerting when you find successful red pill marriages that defy that model. And for my common law, absolutely does. For Rollo's, absolutely does. Every guy who's in a happy, healthy, red-pilled relationship that I know, and I know most of the good ones anyway, at least that I know of. There's always a hidden ones. You guys will map this to your life and either it'll map or it won't, so whatever. They have, their wives work. Whether it's because they need the money and they want to have like a better lifestyle, so she's invested in working towards the family, or it's just that, she needs something to do, the kids are all out of the house, and I'm not just going to have her sit at home fingering her tablet all day. That's boring. She needs to be something productive. But whatever it is. So it shows that while there's the classic idea of a male-dominant relationship being the best one, this is why you'll see Rollo go off on guys like Dr. Jeff Miller, or who's the other one, or Jack Murphy, or any of the poly stuff, because he's like, you guys know better. Like, yes, that you become the exception for the rule, good for you. He's not faulting that, but from experience, like, what if everybody did the poly thing, what would happen? We'd end up with warlords, we'd end up with harems, and we'd end up with a lot of incels murdering each other in hopes that they could grape the extra wives. So that's not a solid, sustainable strategy. Male-dominant monogamy is the one that tends to be consistent. That's the one that got us through most eras of life, like thousands of years. It's been tried, tested, and true. Now we can argue about marriage versus common law relationships. Those are all kind of constructs. Like marriage, as it's seen today, and I'm not going to mott and bail it like a lot of the Christians do, where they think, oh, well, marriage is the covenant between a man. It's like, no, it's not. It's a legal status. It's not a contract either, you stupid MGTOWs. A contract has consideration, and if you don't know what that means, consideration means you cannot enter into a contract where you don't get anything from it. And I asked this from guys, like, what is it you get out of a marriage that you wouldn't otherwise get out of a long-term relationship? And nobody has the answer. They all think they do. They'll say, like, oh, you can have kids. It's like, you don't need a marriage license to have kids. It's like, fair. Well, you need this. The only answer I've ever heard that makes sense is that sometimes in countries, like a lot of Middle Eastern countries, if you don't have an official certification of marriage, they don't recognize it. They don't recognize common law, and so you're considered two single people. can cause some problems if you're, like, say, in Saudi Arabia, living in sin with your woman. Red Pill Lions, $5 super chat. That's one heartfelt fuck you cuck article of super chat. Thank you very much, sir. The career-ending super chat as follows. Heard you shout us out in something recently but couldn't find it. What's happening, Ryan? Kevin. Hey, what's up, Kev? Yeah, it was, I don't remember which one it was. I do a lot of these streams, but yeah, somebody was talking about you, and it was interesting hearing about, like, the younger guys getting their things done and carving their way, so it's pretty cool. If you guys don't know, it's Kevin Savo. He did the Captain Savo Captain Savo's TV show there. It's pretty funny. It's pretty good. Rollo was in there playing what was it, the mafia boss or whatever. And then the Red Pill Lions is, and I'm fucking bad at this one. It's like and if I get this wrong, please correct me. It's like an NFT group that uses the funding from the NFTs to fund Red Pilled entertainment. If I'm not mistaken. Correct me in the chat, whatever. But it's interesting. Give it a watch. Plus, Kevin is like, dude. Dude has gone hardcore into fitness. I swear to God, the guy's getting striations. His whole body is so vascular right now. He looks like a giant dick with just veins popping out. It's kind of crazy. Yeah, even in Saudi, things are changing. Yeah, that is true. Donovan Sharp was strangely convincing as a jaded police detective. Well, he was a very good jaded red pill content creator, so I mean, it only makes sense. So where am I going with this one? Oh yeah. Back to the topic. Actually, you know what? Give me a sec. I realize I don't knock these ones out nearly enough, so let's put some levity in here. Old steady.
You want to tell me why the majority of people that voted yes, I can be submissive are men?
Just want to talk a little bit about why I love women.
And the majority that said no are women? I would love y'all to ponder that for a fucking second!
I love how they always make sure, by and large, they shower the feminine energy that girls put out. It's magnetic. You think I can be submissive? You fuck! I adore it.
I never not laugh at that goofy bastard. I hope he beats those charges out. Like, I know I laugh at him going to jail, but, like, he's got a kid. Kid's almost 1 by now. I don't want him to... Kid can't have his dad raised him in jail. Kid'll end up finding crack. Joining whatever. Hey, what's up, Taurus? It's good everybody's here now. The whole gang. So you don't favor any particular model. And now that you understand that, like, marriage isn't a covenant... Everybody can say it's a covenant, but if it's a covenant, then you don't need the government certification. You can just talk to your priest and he's like, yeah, you guys are married. Good enough. You don't have to go to the courthouse. You don't have to get the paperwork done. You just get, what do they do in Braveheart where they wrap like the braid around the 2 people and done it? That's why I kind of think, and this is, again, biased. This is why I think like the common law arrangement is more of a true marriage in the classical sense of the word, because it's basically 2 people choosing to be together. Legalities of it is irrelevant. They just do it on their own. There's nothing you have to do. They're just like, oh, you guys live together, you're common law. And you're like, all right, fair enough. But it's always a choice, right? Like, there's nothing stopping you from just getting up one day, deciding I need to get some cigarettes, and you leave. Now, I know a lot of girls don't like it because they like the security of a marriage contract. Why? Because there's so many legal loopholes and severe costs that guys tend to be more stable. Like, even if they want to leave, they just won't leave because of that. At least that's the impression. And then women, if they want to leave, they can, cash in prizes, all that stuff. So obviously, as a legal standard, it's built for feminine imperative uses. It's good for me when I want it to be, and it's bad for me when I want it to be too. You give us way too much credit. Oh, that's not a Toronto chick. That's a Vancouver chick, Danny. I thought it was Toronto, but yeah, it is Vancouver. She's OnlyFansing it up and doing some modeling in her spare time, and that's how she gets her money. And she's still on TikTok, just ranting about whatever. She made it big there briefly on that OnlyFans gimmick where the guy's like, yeah, I don't want an OnlyFans girlfriend. She refused to cancel her account, and so she broke up with him and then twerked in the mirror. It's a good red-pilled video, by the way. You should go check it out. It's on the coffee one. So back to the models. Yeah, so you kind of realize from a praxeological standpoint, you have to shed the moral veneer. And that includes your multiple narcissistic fantasies, right? The white picket fence fantasy and all the symbology you think involves with that. Or the aposemitism where PP 199... Oh, thank you, sir. No cuck articles. $100.99 super chat. Greetings, Mr. Ryan. Oh, Mr. Ryan's my dad's name. Thank you. What's going on with the $59 tier in Patreon? It's gonna stay locked. It's gonna stay locked for now. It's there's a very, very small group of guys that are still signed on to it, but it's most likely not gonna come back. It's just too much labor intensive, and to coordinate like all those people at once, it's not going to happen. So just keep it locked out. I do not let you subscribe to it. If you somehow, and for some reason people somehow find a way to do it, don't cancel it. I've had to refund a couple guys that managed to get in there. I'm like, don't bother. But yeah, the 59 tier with the group stuff, it was good for a good year there. But then, yeah, since I've closed it off, I just keep it up for legacy purposes. But thank you, sir, for the super chat. So what are we doing here? Oh, right, the fantasies. Yeah, well, it's not that the morality is useless, right? It may be useful, it may not, but the point is you're supposed to make that decision for yourself. That's up to you, because you know what you want better than anybody else. And if you don't know what you want, well, that's why you got to go get experience so you can get to know what you want. You got to date everybody, date the bad girl in that. Yeah, you may think you want, like, it's one of those things that I can always tell when a guy is telling on himself that he has no experience with women when he says he wants genuine desire. He wants, like, love at first sight, the girl to be all over him instantly. She's a total prude. Then once she meets him, turns into a sexual dynamo. And I'm like, dude, guys with experience have met that woman. They all know this woman. You know what kind of woman this is? Do you know what kind of woman it is that's like instantly falls in love with you, is the perfect woman at the first time you see her, absolutely ravenous, all over you? You know what that is? That's a crazy bitch. That is a crazy bitch. She thinks of you as some kind of weird conquest or a fantasy, and she's bipolar or she's borderline personality disorder. And you're an idiot, and you talk about your feelings and what you want and what you expect out of people, and they listen to that, and then they fill that mold. They take that female needs, like same as this girl here was like, all I had to do was act nice and sweet, don't bitch about my problems, don't brag about my job, and all of a sudden he fell in love with me. That's crazy. It's a girl that does that to such a pathological level. It's almost like a heroin. It's like a heroin addiction. And it is, because once the girl gets it, then she gets bored extremely quickly, leaves that relationship for another relationship. And they'll start some drama too. Like, dude, I had a client way back in the day, I remember this, where he had one of those girls totally into him. He thought it was like perfect. Like, I'm going to marry this woman. It was just a borderline chick. And then when she fell out of love with him, it's because she fell into love with somebody else. And he just was like, well, I'm going to go and we'll sort this out. Communicate, right? So she brought the new guy to her place to help him, or to kick him out or something. Like, basically she wanted the two guys to fight over her. And when he went in there, my advice to him is like, look, you wanted a watch or something like that. I'm like, you grab it, say thank you, and you leave. You act polite and kind, like it's a perfect stranger you just met, like a stranger off the street. You don't bring up how good old times were. You don't try to convince her, negotiate. Your goal is to get that watch. Well, it was actually a ring, but yeah, pick up the ring. Thank you very much, sir, madam. You know, no smiling, no flirting, nothing. And he got there. He was like, I think I can handle this. But then once he saw the other guy there, and she was like, oh, that's the one. And he's like, oh, heard you treated her bad. You abused her and shit. And he's like, oh, it's a good thing I listened to Ryan. I'm just here for the ring, man. You guys have a nice day. Walked off. He's like, thank God. You saved me having to beat that guy's ass. I'm like, don't worry about it. So yeah, these like genuine desire fantasies, they don't stand up to reality. And so when you get this experience, you're like, I've dated the 282. I've dated that crazy chick. I know now what to look for with crazy chicks. So automatically, this is why pick me girls is such like a subversive insult to women, because guys who have experience kind of notice that, like, you know what? There's this girl that instantly is talking about wanting to give me a blowjob, and all of a sudden you're like, your radar's coming up. A lot of third world guys will tell you this. You ever see this where, like, you meet a girl on the street and she instantly starts flirting with you? You talk to, like, a third world guy, his first thought is, one, is this a prostitute? And two, where's the guy that's going to rob me when she takes me in the back alley because she loves me so much? That's their first thought. And that comes from experience. And it's not as extreme here. Like, these chicks likely won't stab you. But from that experience of your one shitty BPD experience, you kind of realize now, okay, that one's a crazy one. I'm staying away from that. Or on the other side of things, like the two that are like the extremely other version of it, that's girls that are emotionally unavailable, I think they call it. Maybe they're autistic. Maybe they're just sheltered. Maybe they were sexually gaslit by the church, and they don't want nothing. Only 2 holes are for you, 1 hole's for God. And you're like, all right, fuck it, I'm out of here too. And so you realize this. This is why they used to call them cock teases. I don't even know if they use the term anymore. I don't think you're allowed to. I think it's a human rights convention, but yeah, cock teases. And I remember this. I don't know if I've told the story in Fuck Files. It's been a long time since I've read my own goddamn book, but there was this town in British Columbia called Salmon Arm. And Salmon Arm girls would come to a lot of the big cities, Vancouver, Victoria, whatever, but they had like a very Puritan Protestant thing there. And so if you met a cock tease, she was usually from Salmon Arm. And so like the big joke was always, oh, Salmon Arm girls are the worst. Quenelle was like Quenel. Quenelle was like, that's where the girls that, you know, I have a drug dealer boyfriend. Like, you kind of got like an impression of what the girls were like per each town. I don't know if it's true or not. It was just kind of funny. So it was like in college, that was the biggest thing. Fucking Salmon Arm girls, man. But yeah, they were the most flirtatious ones, and they thought it was great, and they would give you a whiff, and it was nothing. If you want to see an example of this in action, there's a Twitter account by, I think she's a Twitch streamer. I couldn't tell you for sure. Like Moon Dragon, something like that. It's a blonde British chick. But yeah. Fun fact, Bear Hugger from Super Punch-Out is from Salmon Arm. Really? Interesting. And I guess from okay, I'm rambling here, but that's the one Salmon Arm story, but the best Salmon Arm story is, if you know Canadian politics, and I promise I won't do politics much here, but it's a funny story. They call it the Salmon Arm Salute. So in Canada, the Liberal Party of Canada and the Conservative Party of Canada, well, at the time there wasn't one, but the point is they're more regional than anything. Conservatives are West Coast and Liberals are East Coast for the most part. And the East Coast ones hate the West Coast. They think of the Western provinces as colonies, basically. Give us your resources, we'll finance it, and you guys make nothing, we make everything. They call it the Laurentian elite. So he was doing a via rail cross-country thing with his dad, Trudeau and Sr. and Trudeau Jr. And as they were going through, he was saying some prickish stuff to the West Coast, just because typical East Coast liberals are like, I don't like you guys at all, you're a bunch of hicks. And somebody in Salmon Arm was like, hey, had a sign held up, was like, hey, could you please be a little nicer to your Canadian constituents? And he flipped them the bird. And then from the rest of his trip, every time they would roll into a town, they would start throwing tomatoes at the fucking train. Like, I don't think you guys understand. Like, the Trudeaus are like the John F. Kennedy and John F. Kennedy Jr.'s of Canada, at how much hate there is for him on the West Coast. Anyways, those are the 2 Salmon Arm stories. We're back to topics now. So you want to take a praxeological standpoint in this stuff, you have to remove a lot of these fantasies. And the best way to remove the fantasies is to get experience. So you understand what a crazy girl is like. So you don't start looking at, well, colored hair means she's crazy. It turns out colored hair can mean a lot of things. But more often than not, colored hair just means it's colored hair. It could be because she wants to signal like sexual availability. You know, slutty girls kind of like to dress a little bit like that. Sometimes it's they have that natural borderline personality to want to get into what their man is into. Oh, my man's in the San Francisco 49ers. So she becomes a 49ers super fan. And then she breaks up with him, or he dumps her. And so she colors her hair and paints her nails and acts like a boss bitch, because it's essentially... And a great blogger, The Last Psychiatrist, talks about it in his article called Borderline, where women tend to have a borderline personality where they're searching for the strongest identity in the room, hypergamous best option, and then adopting their identity to match it. It's called mirroring. It's a common psychological thing. It's when like you flirt and you mirror what the other person does. That's the kind of way that women are biologically, I don't want to say designed, but evolved for. It's how we get together. The point of this one is, though, and he makes a great metaphor where it's, if you put a borderline chick on an island, she'll no longer be borderline because there's no strong identity to attach to. And he goes, the funny part is, though, she'll turn into a narcissist. And that's why you see a lot of this boss bitch, strong, independent women. It's women who either separated from their hypergamous best option. He dumped her, he cheated on her, whatever. There's a bunch of cases for that. Is it they're attracted to the bad boy types because their security is taken care of now, and those guys are the ones less likely to stick around? Whatever rationale you want to use doesn't really matter. But because now they've lost that hypergamous best option in their life, or whatever it means for them, they tend to become socially isolated. And socially isolated women tend to develop narcissism. If there's no strong identity for them to attach to, they become their own strong identity. Now, a lot of girls say this is a good thing. You want strong, independent women. Comes with some good, comes with some bad. That's where you can get a lot of the bitchy behavior. Like if you, I think Mish said it. It's like he's like, that's the hill I'm gonna die on. There's no girl in a happy, healthy relationship that's running her mouth on Twitter. I'm pretty sure it's true. It doesn't really matter to me because I need the rage clicks. So let them rant, and I can make some funny little shit posts about it. And that's also why, what I call the Lacey Green effect. You get a girl who's like, boss bitch, you can't tell me what to do, feminism for life, finds a good man, all of a sudden softens up, starts talking about red pill this, and it's like, hey, why don't all the good men? And you're like, oh, okay. But you know what I mean? But there's no hypocrisy to it. It's just she felt one way, and now she feels another way, and she's growing into the person that she is today. Excuse me. So back to the praxeology thing. So now that we've said all that stuff, the fact is the red pill doesn't favor the wife that's barefoot and pregnant, single, working home, white picket fence thing explicitly, because we live in a 21st century world. The housing market the way it is, like 2 people working is kind of a necessity at this point. Plus the fact that everything is so easy domestically now. If you have a stay-at-home wife, they are going to be bored unless they have something else. Now there's a bunch of different solutions to that. But that's the point. From a red-pilled praxeological perspective, you're not fighting those realities. You're not saying, well, things should be closer to this ideal. That's what an ideology would do. It's like, well, we can't afford this nice home in this neighborhood we want that takes our kids to school unless we're both working. So, Dr. Madam and Dr. Sir, let's get to it. Or, stay-at-home mom, you want her to stay at home and watch the kids, but, the kids are 5, they go to school right now. Well, get a part-time job as a teacher, go do this, whatever. You know what I mean? It's attached to reality. What is it you really want from this one? And as much as guys hate to admit it, like, yeah, sometimes girls need like purpose too. And just being the great accessory in your life isn't usually enough for a person. They like you there, but they need their own things to do. Plus, for a lot of girls, there's a comfort to it. It's like, and I talk often about alpha and beta behaviors, things that build sexual desire and things that build relationship comfort. A lot of the time, a girl having like just a hint of, I don't need no man, like her own income, her own job, can be what scratches that itch and gives the comfort to know that if you become ultimate Chad, go out for some smokes and never come back, that she'll be fine. Sometimes that's all the relationship comfort you need. You could be a complete, asshole, everything else. Now, I'm not saying that's going to work for everybody, but you get the idea here, right? Anyways, he follows up with, like, most red pill marriages are non-traditional, economically speaking. Both spouses provide income for a common household, but red pill also recognizes that if marital power is realized in terms of economic power, as feminism accepts, as the traditional conservative accepts, then the current trend of wives out-earning their husbands will inevitably lead to an undermining of the successful male-female dynamic required for a stable and successful marriage. That right there is, like, down to a T. Everybody's like, what's wrong with marriages all end divorce and all this and this? I would argue, like, yeah, everybody's got their own little details, but I would argue that this is because people aren't adapting. They aren't adapting to the way things are now. And the way things are now is, again, they're thinking economic input. And that's why you get things like George Bruno talking about, if your girl ever gets a promotion and she's earning more money than you better hide money under the mattress. She's going to leave. Make sure you find yourself the barista at Starbucks and whatever. And I'm not saying don't date a barista Starbucks, but or a Starbucks barista, but yeah, all my 6-figure girlfriend talks about is her early retirement and her rescue dog. Nice. Yeah, exactly. Like Dave says here, I want my girl having other things to do. So it's the same thing here. But you have to focus on those details. And then you realize that, yeah, the old traditional conservative feminist thing of like whoever earns the money calls the shots. Well, women, I think what is the stat? It's been a while and I have no idea if it's still true or if it's been trending up or down. But 40% of relationships, the woman is the primary breadwinner. So you have to abandon economic input as your means of dominance. So what's left? Desire. And this is why I keep talking to you guys about luxury branding. Guys are a commodity good. Girls don't need your income. It's nice to have, but they can perfectly take care of themselves. Yeah, you might be laughing at, oh, it's a miserable thing if they're studio apartments and their dogs and their things. Like, they're living just fine. They're living a nice city life. And if you can't provide someone that's twice as good, and like that's the thing, you're always like, you don't want to have that arms race where all the richest men get all the richest women to themselves, and then everybody else is just left there lying with nothing, fighting over the homeless population. It's like, nah, man, I got a much easier solution. Just abandon economic input as the measure of defining dominance. Which I don't get why so many people are irritated by it. It's like, how about just the idea of you being a top tier dude that a girl's really into, that a girl is like somewhat worried about losing you to another woman, like all that stuff, all the sexual desirable stuff. Why not just lean into that? Like, you rant constantly about being a masculine man. Well, masculine men are attractive. So what about that? It's like, no, that's not the same. And you find out it's just a lie. Nobody gives a shit about masculineness and masculine men. They just want to go back to the barefoot and pregnant in the thing where my job is what keeps this family together, because guys know how to do a job. I can make widgets all day. I can email the fuck out of that office. And as long as I do this one thing I'm good at, everything will work great out for me with life. And they forget that they're kids and their wives. They aren't accessories. They aren't narcissistic furniture on their one-man play. They're human beings. Yes, children and women are human beings. In fact, that's one of the biggest arguments against red pill, is like this is why everybody thought like red pill guys are misogynist, is that they treat women instead of divine creatures as if they're human beings with failability, same as anybody else. And it's one of the few things the MGTOW get right. If you've been coddled your entire life, equality feels like oppression. I get it. It's also why I like a girl with a healthy relationship to her dad, because dads usually don't simp for their daughters. You know, they fall for like the bat in her eyes, please dad, you can have a pony, when she's 6. But as they get older, he's like, all right, I'm fucking, no more ponies. You got 6 ponies and I'm tired of buying them and just getting rid of them. So they kind of start standing up to their kids. And then the kid learns like the healthy boundaries, not to be such a princess. And that's good. That's why if you're ever in a good relationship, you'll find you tend to get along with the girl's dad too, because like, oh. And I always thought this was funny. Like, my girl's dad, he and I get along great. And like, he seems an awful lot like me. Ex-sailor. He was even the same trade. And I was like, that's weird. She didn't even know I was in the Navy, but from the behaviors in that, it just turns out like she loved her dad. And I had a lot of those similar behaviors, and that was the kind of thing she was attracted to. So I guess the question for you guys is, if the kind of women you're attracting are absolute trash, go talk to their dad and see what you think of him. And you're like, oh, I think I need to know what I need to work on. Dark Knight Dev, sir, $5. One cuck article super chat. Heartfelt. Guys on social media say if you can't make $400,000 a year, you're not a real man and can't be your peace and submissive. Everybody's a plow horse. Yeah, dude. Imagine that. Your whole self-worth is relying on your wallet. But let's get to this 400. So it's a little distraction here, but let's go to the USA. One of the higher GDPs. Let's look at the income gap statistics. Do they have an income distribution chart? That would be nice. No, it's just some blogger. Fuck, why is everything here about inequality? Household income in the United States. Median household income. There it is. This is 2019. Can I put up... One sec. Let me see if I got this. No? Where the hell is it? Yeah, that'll work. Does that work? No, that doesn't work. It sort of works. All right, whatever. Close enough. So we'll go to 20. Oh, this is not even the right chart. Son of a... What I'm trying to find is a distribution of like how much people earn versus like economic quintiles. That's what I'm looking for. All right, let's hide this up. God, there's so much victimhood shit here. It's just annoying. I think this might be it. Yeah, I think we got it now. All right, so here's where I'm going with this one. Shares of household income of quintiles in the United States from 1970 to 2021. We can just go to 2021. So you look at these. Economic quintiles, essentially, like you separate the incomes of the population into 5 groups, quintiles, and what everybody earns here. So if we go to, will it show us the actual income or just which percentage of it? Anyways, so the lowest quintile, 2.9%, the second, 8%, 13%. This is like how much income each household earns. Now the average, so like around the third quintile is like, I think 36,000 or 46,000, something like that. So right here down, everybody here earns 50,000 or less. Everybody up here, which is going to be about half, earns a little bit more. But once you get like, all right, so let's, whatever, this kind of stat isn't really panning out the way it should, but I can illustrate the point without charts and facts and figures. They don't care about your feelings anyway. Most people, at least, actually, I can use Canada as a great example of this. In Canada, once you're earning $89,000 a year, you're in the top 10% of income earners. And once you get to 110,000, you're in the top 1% of income earners. So these people here saying if you can't make $400,000 a year to be a real man, like picture who you're asking them to be. Well, you're not asking people, you're not giving them any realistic goal. You're giving them that ideological aspiration. The $400,000 a year earner, do you know who he is? He's the 0.01% of the population. That's nothing. That's nobody. That's like the amount of furries, trans people, and $400,000 a year people. The same numbers. It's a statistical anomaly. But if they give you that absolutely unachievable aspiration, then everything you do, remember what I talked before about ideologies? Nothing's ever good enough. You constantly fight to be harder. You make these actions. That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to be a demagogue searching for sycophants. So when you hear these outlandish claims like this, just remember that. The person on the other end of this is trying to be the new pope in some goofball religion of alpha males. It's just ridiculous. Yeah, just waking up. Our income distribution is most easily found in who pays taxes. All right, fair enough. Thank you very much. It's good to see you, Chesty. It's good to see you again. Yeah, so when you go through all this thing, you realize everybody's just trying to convince you to manipulate you to join their little cargo cult. And it's the one thing I always liked about Red Pill is there's no cargo cult. And if anybody tries to start a cargo cult, he's generally mocked by the rest of the community. It's a bunch of individuals getting together for common purpose. Hence, praxeology. So what do we have for time here? This one's going to be a touch shorter because, again, I got some birthday celebrations here in about another 15 minutes. So let's wrap this one up, and then we'll do some bans. Here we go. So Ian talks a bit about his own relationship in this one. You know, well, we both assume since the girl made more money in our equal marriage, that she should be invested with the most economic power and make the financial decisions. She was miserable. He was miserable. She got resentful, started to become attacking him more. Sex life took a dive, all this stuff. And then he's like, all right, post Red Pill. This is once I gave up worrying about who made more money and got off my ass and just led the family. It didn't matter who makes more money. It doesn't matter how good she is at what she does. While I am fully supportive of my wife's career, the fact of the matter is, as long as she meets the basic requirements we agreed upon, you know, stable, predictable income, she could be a neurologist or sell Mary Kay, and I'm not going to let that interfere with my responsibility as a husband or father, or how I hold her to account as a mother and wife, not because of any silly ideal, any religious commandment, or misguided machismo, but because my praxeology, or a red pill, states that the heterosexual relationship in which the male leads with unapologetic dominance tends to be the most successful. What do you want? What do you want? I want a successful, sustainable relationship, or I want to be able to spin plates and have fun with that. And that's great. You got to focus on this. What do I want? Shed the symbols, use your experience. Focus on the behaviors, ignore all the makeup, you know? Now, the funny part is here, it's like, yeah, women understand this too. And that's why he was mentioning the girl at the very beginning, talking about how she's pulling a fast one on this guy. Even when the girl attempts to rationalize that dominance away, it still doesn't matter. Now, this may sound like, isn't it just that these people creating a new narcissistic fantasy? It's like, not really. It's praxeological. Like, it's people focused on what they want, and everybody's getting what they want, and everybody likes to think of themselves as their own main character. So the girl's thinking, I'm too smart. I'm manipulating this guy into being a perfect husband because I'm just acting like a good, great wife or whatever, or great girlfriend. The guy's like, yeah, I'm in charge. I'm dominant here. In reality, everybody's opting in. It's a choice. But they're playing up like this veneer of like, oh, it's like I'm dominant, the dominant male. Well, you can't really be dominant unless you get buy-in from the other person. It's like the two coins. Everybody loves talking about leadership. Everybody forgets about followership, which is the flip side of the coin. You can't be a good leader without good followership. Now, followership has to be earned. It's not given. Unless you're in like a hierarchy, like, military or whatever. But even then, everybody understands there. Like, you can have people follow your orders to the letter, or you can have people follow your intentions to the letter, and they're not the same thing. Like, I remember this. It was the funniest thing. So we had a watch supervisor, petty officer. She was a little half East Indian, half white girl, horrible bitchy feminist, sleeping her way to the top, didn't know her job, a miserable bitch. And everybody hated her. And I remember this. We were on the bridge doing some evolution. I can't remember what it was. Something important, though. And because she didn't know her job, but she liked to look good in front of the senior officer staff, she would start giving these weird orders that we knew as her juniors, like, that's not going to work. Like, that's going to fuck up. The captain's going to cut it off or whatever, right? But we're like, you know what? Fuck it. So we start doing exactly what she tells us to do. And then sure enough, the command team's like, what the fuck is this? Shut it down. Guys, come into my office. We'll talk about this. We're fucking up and down. So her boss, our head of department, and he didn't like her either. Like, she was the most hated person in the fleet. And I remember he looked over at us. He goes, I see what you guys are doing. You made your point. Cut it out. And he starts laughing. All right, fair enough. So then we took over. So yeah, even if you have that dominant position, it's very easy to undermine somebody if you don't have good followership, and you have to coerce into that. Or you have to not coerce, you have to buy into that. And so he's like, yeah, it's like if you're putting out for your honey like it's prom night, you're a red pill woman. If you respect, embrace, and celebrate your man's sexuality, then you're a red pill woman. If you're keeping yourself in shape, trying to do your best, and always appealing to the things that matter to him, you're a red pill woman. Regardless, and no matter what you might think you're pulling over on him. Again, doesn't matter what's going on in her head, doesn't matter what her justifications are. The only thing that matters when she walks through that door is woman. And this one's doing it. She's like, oh, this is great. Can't believe I'm tricking him. It's like, are you? Not really. He's getting what he wants. Everybody's happy. So when he finally agrees to commit, it'll be with the expectation that you'll continue to be this kind of woman. So don't think that a ring on your finger is going to somehow alter the basic underlying highly pragmatic red pill foundation to the relationship. That's actually more for guys, because guys seem to have this whole finish line. It's like, once I got the ring, I'm good to go. No. But it's so hard to get there. Like, this is not an easy catchphrasey topic. That's why it's always like, oh, the bitch belongs to the streets and fucking whammon, am I right? Because explaining this one where it's like the only thing that matters is woman. And yeah, you can have your own career, you can dye your hair, you can get a tattoo, but sexually available, meeting your needs, being pleasant, being a addition to his life, maybe convincing him that some of the things he held as like steadfast values aren't really that important after all. That's fine. But you can't make a bumper sticker with that shit, And then there's the temporal nature of it. Like, they're never going to last forever. Even if you think it's going to last forever, one of you is going to die first. So at the end of this, one of you is going to be alone, if not both. And so that's the whole point of praxeology. Like, why does it matter? What's the fundamental steps that get you from, the angry Michael story, whammon ain't shit, I can't believe they're sucking all these dicks, they're never going to get a good man, to the end where you're like, you got a chick with tattoos, but you got a really happy life, great condo downtown Vancouver or downtown Toronto, and fucking tons of money and all that stuff, right? Oh, but she's working. She's not like my TradCon wife. You mean the one that was an ex-porn star that put on a summer dress that hides her tattoos, and now she's not like that anymore, and she doesn't do what she used to do on video? It's like, all right, fair enough. Yeah. See, a stripper gets it too. I would argue to be a good leader comes only after learning how to be a good follower. Well, that's the thing. That's why it's always about a hierarchy, followership. You have to have good followership. A lot of people don't talk about that because guys think that sounds like it's subservient, and it's not. It's not. It's the understanding that everything is optional. Everything is an opt-in. All of a guy's problems, opt-in problems. All of a guy's successes, opt-in successes. All of a guy's commitments, opt-in. It turns out the only misery in this life that you accept, or the only misery in life that exists, the only misery in life that guys have, the only misery that guys complain about on Twitter, the only misery that's on YouTube, the only misery that's on your blog, the only misery that you bitch about to anybody who will listen is the misery that you opt into. You opt into it because you're making a choice that you want that misery for one reason or another. This is the same for that guy that's like, I hate my wife, I haven't had sex, I'm hooked on, I gotta get prostitutes and porn now because I love my kids and I want to be a part of their life. That's an opt-in misery. I'd argue it's not a healthy one either, but it's not my choice to make. For a lot of guys who like, oh, I got a chick, but she's cheating on me, but I think I can do better, and she's got an extra boyfriend, and we're poly and whatever. Those are opt-in problems. All of them are. And I think this is probably, like, everybody loves to rag on dark triad, and I'll end on this. A lot of people will rag on the dark triad stuff, but I'll say this. The one thing that I think is more, I don't even want to say cruel, but more dark triad than dark triad is a guy who's ruthless towards his own satisfaction. Like, if you got a frigid wife and a bunch of kids, like, you're willing to nuke the marriage. You're like, you know what? I would rather be a happy father who sees his kids half the time than a miserable man that gets to see him 100% of the time. That power to nuke everything and start again is powerful. The idea that, I get it, you're going to weaponize the kids against me because you can't stand me because I left you, but the kids are going to turn 18, they're going to realize you're crazy, and we'll have a good relationship afterwards, and I got a college fund saved for them and all that shit. A lot of guys willing to make those hard choices. It's a superpower, man, because you have to basically be okay with loss, like suffering in the short term to get a happiness long term. And it sucks too, because chicks hate that. How dare you sacrifice your children's short-term happiness for your long-term success? Don't you know how selfish that is? Like, is it? Or would you rather I be one of those MGTOWs that spends my entire net worth fighting with the lawyers over to get an extra weekend a month? Meanwhile, the kids grow up to, like, hate everybody because they have no future. Or would you rather be that dad that, you know what? Kids, the door's open. You can come see me when you see me. You don't have to like me, but god damn it, once you graduate, here's your down payment for a house when you get married, or here's your college tuition to get you started. You don't have to like me, but you're going to damn well be a good goddamn adult when you get there. Obviously, these are extreme examples, and most are nowhere near this extreme. But the willingness to be that extreme, if you have to, is kind of the goal here. And that's why these extreme examples help, because they let you think, oh, geez, am I willing to, like, abandon my family in order to make sure my kids are raised happy and healthy? Like, well, luckily for you, you probably won't have to. For you, it's just like, you know, if my wife's getting out of pocket, leave the house for a couple days, come back more pleasant. Don't let her yell at me and put up with shit so that my kids learn a better example of how to husband and wife can treat each other, or boyfriend and girlfriend can treat each other. Or, you know, don't let my wife browbeat me so my daughter doesn't think, well, that's how you're supposed to treat a man, because that's all I know. You know that whole, like, women basically become their mothers? Well, if you let mom treat you like shit, what you've just done is you just, like, made your daughter into that girl in 20 years. And I just don't know. A lot of guys seem to not like it, but they're not willing to take any steps to alleviate it. And it's just funny how, like, you being a good man tends to solve all of this stuff by you searching for your own happiness and success. You tend to be more of, like, they call it the benevolent dictator. The idea that your happiness will overpour onto everybody else, and everybody else is going to be better off when you're better off. And it's this weird thing, but it's not weird once you understand it. How men have, like, a sacrificial nature of love. They have an aspirational version of love. Sorry, self-sacrificial version of, like, love, as well as an aspirational model of it. It's always you want to see the best in everybody. And yeah, even if you're, you know, a hardcore asshole, there's still elements to that. Even the drug dealer husband's like, don't touch my mom, don't beat my wife, I'll kill you. You know what I mean? Women tend to be more Machiavellian and more, like, selfish that way. So it's one of those powers that you have to learn to hold for yourself and be responsible for it to the people that are worth being responsible for. Like, obviously, if you got a cheating crack whore wife, you know what? Fuck it. You're out of the club. yeah, she doesn't get any of that benevolent dictator. But if you got a girl that's generally good, follows your lead, good followership, you know, tricks you by being the perfect wife, like, that'll learn them. Tee-hee-hee. In reality, I have a job. Yeah, fuck, who cares? Enjoy yourselves. Would you say Dark Triad is more genetic than learned behavior? Well, from the red pill praxeological idea, they're just a cluster of behaviors that people have found have been more attractive than not. Psychopathy, Machiavellianism, narcissism. Now, if you want to go to the extreme psychopathy, like psychopaths, narcissistic personality disorder, and like hardcore Machiavellian cunning whatevers, yeah, they tend to be, like, you can't be a psychopath. They tend to have limbic brain damage that's like a birth defect or from childhood abuse. You can't learn that. Narcissistic personality disorder, usually you're missing a part of your like development. You got touched by Uncle Touchy when you were a kid. Like, you can't learn that. But what you can do is take, okay, so what are the behaviors that are useful in those dark triad ones? Sometimes it's the impulsiveness, it's the self-confidence, it's like the ability to plan ahead and be willing to take short-term pain for long-term success. Those things all work great. And that's why I mentioned Killology in Praxeology Volume 1. The idea that, okay, those are great traits to have, but psychologically it's hard for people to have them. So what you do is you train yourself to instinctively do these things. So you don't have to have that moral conundrum every time you want to do something that's in your own self-interest, but at the detriment of some woman you don't know. Because in your mind, that's like your male protective instinct is not feeling good about that. So you have to kind of distance yourself from that moral thing, in the same way that a lot of guys were learning that if you shoot target practice on silhouettes of humans, it makes it easier when you actually have to go on the battlefield and shoot somebody, that you're not seeing it as like, I'm killing a human being. It's just you're practicing a learned motor skill. And so you kind of have to learn it as like a motor skill. But yeah, you're never going to be dark triad like purposely at all. Yeah, a general lack of empathy is an underlying element of dark triad is genetic. Yeah, and that's the thing. So you just have to learn, and I think Whisper put it the best. And like I said, I keep saying this is the final thought, but this is the final thought. This is the final thought. Whisper put it best, where you have to understand this male protective instinct and learn to treat it as if it's valuable and only give it to people who deserve it. Because I think the worst thing that people do, which is what the idea of the dark triad stuff is meant to address, the worst thing they do is they apply this universally. They basically whore out their male protective instinct for free. It's no different than the hooker sucking dick in the alleyway in the back for $5. Don't be the whore that sucks dick in the alleyway for $5, fellas. I think. Thank you, Ryan. I never considered the nuking I performed as power. Oh, it is. That's the only power a guy has, is his ability to walk away, his freedom. That's why a lot of girls think of power as control, and a lot of guys think of power as freedom. Hence, I don't know if you guys have noticed this politically lately, but it's like authoritarian bootlicker versus libertarian leave me the fuck alone. And you always wondered about this. Like, God, why do these people believe this? And you're realizing, oh, women versus men. We've turned into a giant 6-year-old dodgeball game. So anyways, that is Red Morning for today. We're going to banter a little bit, and then we're going to end it. So let's start off with, oh, what the hey. This one. Oh, that doesn't work. Fine. We'll start with this one.
We know that these videos really prey on vulnerable young men who have not had many experiences in dating.
Not Ryan Stone. I think he's the most important guy in the world. Ryan Stone. Give a fuck about Ryan Stone. Me and him have gone back and forth. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Ryan Stone does not pass the 6-foot test. He's not even a man. So I don't give a fuck.
Hey, speaking of which, congratulations to Tater fans. I hear he's out on his own reconnaissance under house arrest with the anklet and everything. So, whatever. Enough shit talking. We're gonna say on this note, have fun with it.
79T,
as always, thank you for the likes, thanks for the retweets. Follow me on Twitter. You know the deal. Catch you guys later. Rule 0, I think, is on John Fitch's channel. I haven't set the redirect to it, so I'll get there and do it. Actually, maybe I can handle it now. Let me see if I got time when this outro is playing to quickly do the redirect. John set it up on his channel. I'll bring you right over there. Francis. No, he has not. All right, fair enough. You guys have fun. Catch you later.